Hey everyone, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, please subscribe. I'd really love that. If you're returning, how you doing? What we're going to talk about today is the fact that truckloads of farm fresh milk are being flushed down the drain into Milwaukee's sewer system. And this is recent because dairy plants are filled to the brim and they can't accept more of the highly perishable commodity. And this is disturbing. So the milk has been treated to comply with state and federal environmental regulations, including the Federal Clean Water Act, before it went into the wastewater treatment system. So it has to be treated to a level that is safe, from my understanding, and it goes to the water treatment to this plant. It has to be treated to what they're regulated on before it can be discharged into Lake Michigan. Why not? Why throw it out? I don't understand. So recently, it's about 5 truckloads a week of milk that's being dumped. A full truckload would be approximately 6,500 gallons of milk. So times that by 5. Okay. The milk comes from Wisconsin dairy farms, probably on the east side of the state, and it's processed by Earth Environmental, which is a waste disposal service firm. And Earth Environmental treats it to comply with the district's requirements, as untreated raw milk flushed into the sewers would be a violation of regulations and would raise havoc with the wastewater treatment system. So Earth Environmental, when journalists tried to reach out to them for answers, they couldn't be reached. And the company says it handles hazardous and non-hazardous waste materials. It's unknown how long the Milwaukee Sewerage District, which serves nearly 30 communities and has thousands of miles of sewer pipe, has received discarded farm milk. Previously, it handled whey, W-H-E-Y, which is a byproduct for cheese making, and food waste that goes into a separate anaerobic waste digester. But farm fresh milk going into the state's largest sewer system and eventually as wastewater into Lake Michigan is just jaw-dropping. But one thing is for sure, the dumping of fresh milk is money down the drain for dairy farmers already struggling with declining incomes and rising expenses. So it's pretty tragic, if you ask me. Dairy plants in the upper Midwest have been overloaded with milk used to make cheese and butter and other products. When one Minnesota plant was ordered to close for around 30 days because of wastewater issues, the 45 farms that it supports were told they'd have to start dumping their milk, which is a highly perishable commodity if not processed quickly. And farmers, they're not having it. They're not happy. So I'm having a really hard time grasping this idea. I really, truly am. I actually have pictures of this happening. Look, real quick. So in the spring of 2020, there was a farm near West Bend. It opened the spigot and flushed out hundreds of thousands of pounds of milk into a wastewater lagoon. Because why? There was nowhere for it to go. The State Department of Natural Resources said that if the dumping of raw, unpasteurized milk wasn't done correctly, it could get into the public waterways, reducing the oxygen content and killing aquatic life. Sometimes the unwanted farm product has ended up in manure pits. Now it's being run through a sewer system. It's pretty gross, if you ask me. You know, dairy farmers are dependent on a limited number of processors that are sometimes hamstrung by reduced market demand. Like when the pandemic forced closures of restaurants and or there's just simply too much milk. Farms are so productive these days, partly from increased size of operations and improved cow genetics, that they quickly flood the marketplace with milk and beef and other commodities. Moreover, farmers who have invested heavily in their milk operations, they can't afford to just turn off the spigot. Just doesn't work that way. Instead, as profit margins start to shrink from supply and demand getting out of balance, they have to squeeze out ever higher amounts of milk to cover their costs, even if it adds to the overall surplus. The prices that farmers receive for their unprocessed, unpasteurized milk are largely determined by the force of supply and demand, and also government programs. And minimum prices are set by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which uses complicated formulas based on the wholesale market value of various dairy products like cheese, butter, and whey. And many farmers, they see themselves as like pawns on a chessboard in an agricultural system that are stacked against them, faced with new options to control what they receive for their products. And they ramp up population or production and hope markets don't buckle under their strain. And prices in the grocery store, they often remain even as high as farmers are paid even less. A year ago, the price Wisconsin farmers received for their milk reached a record high of more than $25 per 100 pounds, around 8.6 gallons, which encouraged many to ramp up production. Now, since then, as the market adjusted, the price has plummeted to less than $15 per 100 pounds, which is the lowest level it's been in years. But there's still more milk that is needed. 90% of Wisconsin milk is made into cheese, and that's more than 3 billion pounds per year. But the plants are still getting too much milk, and they're struggling to find help to hire to fill all these work shifts. And labor is one of the biggest issues here. And efforts have been made to get dairy products into the food pantries in order to reduce stockpiles building up in commercial warehouses. That's not always affordable or even practical. So it could take a culling of dairy cattle. Again, here we go again with the culling, usually sold off for beef, to get the supply and demand ratio for milk back in balance. Meanwhile, many dairy farms are at risk of going under as their expenses continue to rise. Since the year 2000, more than 70% of U.S. dairy farms have closed for good because they were unable to stay financially afloat in a market increasingly dominated by the biggest operators. It's been a disaster for dairy farmers, rural communities, consumers, the environment, animal welfare. Discarded milk represents a massive amount of work wasted on the farm, including planting, harvesting crops, raising livestock, milking cows. Generations of farm families and their communities are at risk when milk markets collapse and milk has to be dumped. For farmers, this has got to be awful. It's got to be awful. And all of their time, their money, all their blood, sweat, and tears out the spigot with the milk into Lake Michigan. Awesome. So this happened, what was it, 2 years ago, I think it was? Remember when we saw all the milk being dumped? Well, it's happening again. Anyway, all right, guys, I'm out of here, okay? I will see you in the next one. You stay safe, you stay positive, you keep prepping, and as always, fearless. Ciao.